Her attire was that of a lady, but extremely plain, and in her manner, even when she sat as still as she did then, there was an indefinable something which appeared to be in kindred with her scrupulously unpretending dress. She had sat, at first, looking anxiously towards the bed, but seeing that the patient remained quiet and was busy with his writing, she had softly moved her chair to its present place, partly, as it seemed, from an instinctive consciousness that he desired to avoid observation, and partly that she might, unseen by him, give some vent to the natural feelings she had hitherto suppressed. Of all this and much more, the rosy landlady of the Blue Dragon took as accurate a note and observation as only women can take of women, and at length she said, in a voice too low, she knew, to reach the bed, "Have you seen the gentleman in this way before, miss? Is he used to these attacks?" "I have seen him very ill before, but not so ill as he has been tonight." "What providence," said the landlady of the Dragon, "that you have had the prescriptions and the medicines with you, miss. They are intended for such an emergency. We never travel without them." "Oh," thought the hostess, "then we are in the habit of travelling and travelling together." She was so conscious of expressing this in her face, that meeting the young lady's eyes immediately afterwards, and being a very honest hostess, she was rather confused. "The gentleman, your grandpa," she resumed after a short pause, "being so bent on having no assistance, must terrify you very much, miss." "I've been very much alarmed tonight. He is not my grandfather." "Father, I should have said," returned the hostess, sensible of having made an awkward mistake. "Nor my father," said the young lady. "Nor," she added, slightly smiling, with a quick perception of what the landlady was going to add, "nor my uncle. We are not related." "Oh dear me," returned the landlady, still more embarrassed than before. "How could I have been so very much mistaken, knowing, as anybody in their proper senses might, that a gentleman is ill? He looks so much older than he really is. But I should have called you miss too, ma'am." But when she had proceeded thus far, she glanced involuntarily at the third finger of the young lady's left hand, and faltered again, for there was no ring upon it. "When I told you we were not related," said the young lady, but not without confusion on her own part, "I meant not in any way, not even by marriage. Did you call me, Martin?" "Call you?" cried the old man, looking quickly up and hurriedly drawing beneath the coverlet the paper on which he had been writing. "No." She had moved a pace or two towards the bed, but stopped immediately and went no further. "No," he repeated with a petulant emphasis. "Why do you ask me? If I had called you, what need for such a question?" "It was the creaking of the sign outside, sir, I dare say," observed the landlady. A suggestion, by the way, as she felt a moment after she had made it, not at all complimentary to the voice of the old gentleman. "No matter what, ma'am," he rejoined, "it wasn't I. Why, how you stand there, Mary, as if I had the plague! But they're all afraid of me," he added, leaning helplessly backward on his pillow. "Even she. There's a curse upon me. What else have I to look for?" "Oh dear, no, oh no, I'm sure," said the good-tempered landlady, rising and going towards him. "Be of better cheer, sir. These are only sick fancies." "What are only sick fancies?" he retorted. "What do you know about fancies? Who told you about fancies? The old story, fancies." "Only see again there how you take one up," said the mistress of the Blue Dragon, with unimpaired good humour. "Dear heart alive, there is no harm in the word, sir, if it is an old one. Folks in good health have their fancies too, and strange ones every day." Harmless as this speech appeared to be, it acted on the traveller's distrust like oil on fire. He raised his head up in the bed, and fixing on her two dark eyes, whose brightness was exaggerated by the paleness of his hollow cheeks, as they in turn, together with his straggling locks of long grey hair, were rendered whiter by the tight black velvet skull-cap which he wore, he searched her face intently. "Ah, you begin too soon," he said in so low a voice that he seemed to be thinking it rather than addressing her. "But you lose no time. You do your errand and you earn your fee. Now who may be your client?" The landlady looked in great astonishment at her whom he called Mary, and finding no rejoinder in the drooping face, looked back again at him. At first she had recoiled involuntarily, supposing him disordered in his mind, but the slow composure of his manner and the settled purpose announced with his strong features, and gathering most of all about his puckered mouth, forbade the supposition. "Come," he said, "tell me who is it? Being here, it is not very hard for me to guess who I suppose." "Martin," interposed the young lady, laying her hand upon his arm, "reflect how short a time we have been in this house, and that even your name is unknown here." "Unless," he said, "you He was evidently tempted to express a suspicion of her having broken his confidence in favour of the landlady, but either remembering her tender nursing, or being moved in some sort by her face, he checked himself, and changing his uneasy posture in the bed, was silent. "There," said Mrs. Lupin, for in that name the Blue Dragon was licensed to furnish entertainment both to man and beast. "Now you will be well again, sir. You forgot for the moment that there were none but friends here." "Oh!" cried the old man, moaning impatiently as he tossed one restless arm upon the coverlet. "Why do you talk to me of friends? Can you or anybody teach me to know who are my friends and who are my enemies?" "At least," urged Mrs. Lupin gently, "this young lady is your friend, I am sure." "She has no temptation to be otherwise," cried the old man, like one whose hope and confidence were utterly exhausted. "I suppose she is. Oh, heaven knows. There, let me try to sleep. Leave the candle where it is." As they retired from the bed, he drew forth the writing which had occupied him so long, and holding it in the flame of the taper, burnt it to ashes. That done, he extinguished the light, and turning his face away with a heavy sigh, drew the coverlet about his head, and lay quite still. This destruction of the paper, both as being strangely inconsistent with the labour he had devoted to it, and as involving considerable danger of fire to the dragon, occasioned Mrs. Lupin not a little consternation. But the young lady, evincing no surprise, curiosity, or alarm, whispered her with many thanks for her solicitude and company, that she would remain there some time longer, and that she begged her not to share her watch, as she was well used to being alone, and would pass the time in reading. Mrs. Lupin had her full share and dividend of that large capital of curiosity which is inherited by her sex, and at another time might have been difficult to impress this hint upon her as to induce her to take it. But now, in sheer wonder and amazement at these mysteries, she withdrew at once, and repairing straight away to her own little parlour below stairs, sat down in her easy chair with unnatural composure. At this very crisis a step was heard in the entry, and Mr. Pecksniff, looking sweetly over the half-door of the bar and into the vista of snug privacy beyond, murmured, "Good evening, Mrs. Lupin." "Oh dear me, sir," she cried, advancing to receive him. "I'm so very glad you have come." "And I am very glad I have come," said Mr. Pecksniff. "If I can be of service, I am very glad I have come. What is the matter, Mrs. Lupin?" "A gentleman taken ill upon the road has been so very bad upstairs, sir," said the tearful hostess. "A gentleman taken ill upon the road has been so very bad upstairs? Has he?" repeated Mr. Pecksniff. "Well, well." Now there was nothing that one may call decidedly original in this remark, nor can it be exactly said to have contained any wise precept, therefore unknown to mankind, or to have opened any hidden source of consolation. But Mr. Pecksniff's manner was so bland, and he nodded his head so soothingly, and showed in everything such an affable sense of his own excellence, that anybody would have been, as Mrs. Lupin was, comforted by the mere voice and presence of such a man. And though he had merely said, "A verb must agree with its nominative, case in number and person, my good friend, or 8 times 8 are 64, my worthy soul," must have felt deeply grateful to him for his humanity and wisdom. "And how," asked Mr. Pecksniff, drawing off his gloves and warming his hands before the fire, as benevolently as if they were somebody else's, not his, "and how is he now?" "He is better and quite tranquil," answered Mrs. Lupin. "He is better and quite tranquil," said Mr. Pecksniff. "Very well, very well." Here again, though the statement was Mrs. Lupin's and not Mr. Pecksniff made it his own, and consoled her with it. It was not much when Mrs. Lupin said it, but it was a whole book when Mr. Pecksniff said it. "I observe," he seemed to say, "and through me, morality in general remarks that he is better and quite tranquil." "There must be weighty matters on his mind, though," said the hostess, shaking her head, "for he talks, sir, in the strangest way you ever heard. He is far from easy in his thoughts, and wants some proper advice from those whose goodness makes it worth his having." "Then," said Mr. Pecksniff, "he is the sort of customer for me." But though he said this in the plainest language, he didn't speak a word. He only shook his head disparagingly of himself too. "I'm afraid, sir," continued the landlady, first looking round to assure herself there was nobody within hearing, and then looking down upon the floor, "I am very much afraid, sir, that his conscience is troubled by his not being related to, or even married to, a very young lady. Mrs. Lupin, said Mr. Pecksniff, holding up his hand with something in his manner as nearly approaching to severity as any